I caught my gaslighting husband having an affair, but it turns out it was his long-lost sister. I fell in love with her and left him. My husband had been acting very strange for a few months. He was being protective of his phone and lied about his whereabouts. And so naturally, I started suspecting an affair. One particular night after he said he was going to his best friend's house even though his best friend was out of the country, I followed his location, which was the bar. I walked in preparing the worst, and after scanning the bar looking for him, I saw him seated at the very back with a woman sharing a beer and laughing. I stared at them with a lot of pain in my eyes, and as I was looking at them, my husband turned his head in my direction. I crapped myself and instinctively tried my best to quickly crouch down behind the nearest table. My heart thumped fast, but I quickly realized that thankfully for me, my husband was looking at the waitress and called her over to grab another beer. When I saw his head turn back around to the woman he was with, who I had figured out was his affair partner, I quickly headed out of the bar. I turned around and went home, and once home got in the bed and cried myself to sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard my husband walking through the door. He stumbled into the bedroom and threw himself on the bed. He noticed he woke me up and apologized and gave me a kiss on the forehead. After greeting me, I asked him how it was at his best friend's house. He told me it was great and that they had lots of fun. He sounded extremely angry. He asked me if I was hungry or did I need anything. I told him no and that I was going back to bed. How dare he be so sweet and kind after lying to me and meeting up with some chick at the bar? I tried to go back to sleep, but I tossed and turned while the image of her laughing with him replayed in my head all night. I couldn't believe my husband would lie to me. What did she have that I didn't? Yes, she was beautiful and seemed nice, but it was the way he looked at her. He had never looked at me like that. Then he had the audacity to come home, lie to my face, and even seemed happier than he was before he left. I finally find myself drifting to sleep. The next morning I rolled over, and next to me were 2 eggs over easy, some bacon, and a piece of toast. In chocolate syrup on the plate next to the toast read, "Happy anniversary, my love." My husband had made me breakfast in bed, but he was nowhere to be found. I got out of bed to brush my teeth, and that's when my husband slipped into the bathroom behind me. He kissed me on the cheek and told me good morning. I squirmed away, and he asked me what was wrong. I told him that I knew that he had been cheating on me with another woman. He looked taken aback and confused about what I just told him. He asked me what I was talking about, and I told him how I knew he never went to his best friend's house, and how I found out he went to the bar to meet some girl, because I had tracked his location. He paused for a moment, and then I saw the ends of his lips form a grin. He laughed. He laughed so hard that he couldn't catch his breath. I shoved him and stormed out of the bathroom. He followed me, still out of breath and belly laughing. "Honey," he said, "sit down. Let me explain." I knew he was cheating. I didn't want to hear it, so I ignored him and left into the living room. Once again, he followed me and asked me to just give him 30 seconds to explain. I didn't want to, but I sat down and listened. He asked me if I remembered the one night that we went out to dinner at the Italian spot. I told him yes, but I didn't understand the relevance. He asked me if I remembered when he drank 4 drinks without touching a piece of bread and started telling me everything about his past. I again told him yes, not knowing where he was going with this. That night he talked about his long-lost sister, and that was when all the pieces started coming together. He said the woman he met at the bar was his long-lost sister. Her name was Jill. They had got separated when they were young because his mom couldn't afford to keep both of them in the household, so she kept my husband and gave Jill to her sister, who lived halfway across the country. They fell out of contact because her mom couldn't afford the phone bill, and when the aunt who took care of Jill passed away, they didn't attend her funeral. Jill had grown up by this time and couldn't find my husband or their mom for years after. He told me that she finally found him by going through state records of their family. From there, she found his Facebook page. He said they messaged for a while and decided to meet at that bar yesterday night. This made sense, but I still didn't fully believe him, because if that was his sister, why would he lie about going to John's house? I asked him why he lied, and he told me that if he and her didn't get along, he didn't want to introduce me to her or even bring her up. I told him he could have still told me instead of lying to me and making me find out on my own that he was at the bar with another woman. I told him it was the principal. He apologized and told me he wouldn't do it again, no matter how little the lie was. I didn't believe him, so I told him to show me the messages between them, and he showed some messages back and forth with the mystery woman claiming to be his sister and wanting to meet up. After reading their conversation, I asked him how did he know that was his sister, and not just some woman. He told me that he saw her last name on her driver's license when they were at the bar. Everything checked out, but I still wanted to be sure, so I told him to let me meet her if she was his long-lost sister. He agreed and texted her to meet up later that night. Any time earlier wouldn't be a great time because we already had anniversary dinner plans at one of our favorite restaurants. It was getting close to noon at this point, and we had a couple's massage booked at 1 p.m., so I told him we better hurry if we were going to make it. We headed to the spa place, and the car ride was quiet. The messages, the lies, and the bar scene kept replaying in my head. I hoped that that was only his sister. My husband, feeling the tension in the car, asked how everything was going at work. Breaking the recurring thoughts in my head and rejoining the present moment, I told him everything was fine. He told me that was good, and he was happy that I was doing well. We arrived at the spa, and he went around the car to open my door. We headed inside and enjoyed our spa day together. After our massage was finished, my husband and I both felt a bit more relaxed. My husband more than me. We left the spa and headed back home to get ready for dinner that night. My husband was more talkative on the car ride home. I tried not to be dry and engaged more in the conversation and even threw in a head nod every now and again. We got home, and my husband went to the living room and plopped down on the couch. I told him I was going to go get ready and went to the bedroom closet. I looked at the tight, classy black dress, and then at the long red wine-colored dress in my closet. Before I knew it, it was 6 o'clock, and I headed back into the bedroom. My husband looked spiffy. I grabbed my purse and we head to the restaurant where he first told me about his long-lost sister. My heart fell to my stomach again, and I was reminded how he lied to me to meet with her. I tried to brush away the feeling and head into the restaurant. We ate, and I forced a few laughs, and towards the end of dinner, my husband's phone buzzed. It must be her. He flips it over and reads the message. Jill is asking where we are. He told her we were at dinner and he would head over to the bar right after. I asked him did she knew I was coming, and he told me she didn't. This enraged me because why would he not tell this mystery woman that I would be going with him? I tell him to go ahead and get the check and let's go. I was ticked off and felt like our anniversary day was completely ruined because of this woman that had a hold on my husband. I walked to the car and wait for my husband to join me. We headed to the bar, and the closer I got, the more anxious I felt. We finally get there, and he finds Jill sitting at the bar talking to the bartender. She had already bought 2 shots. When I walked up behind him, she looked surprised, and that was when my husband finally introduced me to Jill. She said it was nice to meet me and smiled. Her smile was beautiful and paired perfectly with her brown hair and green eyes. I returned the smile, and we all enjoyed drinks at the bar together. I almost couldn't believe that I thought my husband would be leaving me for her. I felt bad about the names that I had called her in my head and for being so rough on my husband, especially on our anniversary. My husband didn't seem bothered throughout it all, though. We laughed and talked about everything. Jill told me she was a nurse and was planning on moving to our town soon. She asked if it would be okay if she stayed with us for a while because she wanted to finally live close to family. But after what I put my husband through and considering they had been separated for years, I agreed. My husband seemed so happy. He said that the 2 most important women in his life lived in harmony. We ended the night with hugs, and Jill gave me and my husband her personal number. Then we drove home. That night, I couldn't help but think about the way she looked at me and her laugh. The next morning, my husband and I decided to hang out again with Jill and to arrange her move-in. Her stuff was states away, and she was living at a hotel at the moment. My husband proposed that it be easier to just hire a moving company to bring it here instead of driving there, and I agreed, so that's what we did. A couple weeks later, Jill had settled in our home while she was looking for jobs. During this time, me and Jill were bound by the hip. We would go shopping together, try out new restaurants, and get our nails done. We had become close in such a short amount of time. She was easily becoming my best friend. After a month of living with us, my husband asked Jill one night at dinner how she liked her stay and if there was anything she needed. She looked over at me and told him that she had everything she needed right here. She smiled. He said great, and to let him know if she needed anything else. As the months went by, I was spending less time with my husband and more time with Jill. I loved the sound of her laugh, and being around her made me so happy. I was cleaning the house more, cooking more, and overall had a better attitude. One night, as I was lying in bed with my husband, I sat in the dark room thinking about Jill. I thought about how she made me feel and how she was as a person. I then began to entertain the thought of possibly living our lives together. It was just a vision at first, until every night before bed, I would imagine these scenarios. After a while, I had to speak to her about it. I had to know if she felt the same way. After a long day of shopping together again, we went to a nearby restaurant. As we sat down and waited for our order, I asked her if she liked me. She laughed and said of course she liked me. Then I asked her again if she liked me beyond just our friendship, and that's when she looked me in the eyes, brought my chin forward and kissed me. She asked if that answers your question. I didn't know what to do, but during the kiss, the imaginary scenarios all flashed back into my mind all over again. I had never told my husband that I was bi, and I felt kinda bad having feelings for his sister, so we both decided to keep it under wraps. A few months later, we were doing everything as a couple. When my husband would leave the house for work, me and Jill would get it on. In the bedroom, in the kitchen, even in the attic if you let us. Then we would cuddle and watch movies together. Our love had bloomed so beautifully over time. I was so happy having Jill there, and she seemed beyond happy to be with me. One day in the middle of having our intimate time, we chose the living room this time. We heard the front door open. We both turned around, confused and alarmed. It was my husband. What was he doing home so early? He looked at us and dropped his briefcase. He asked us what was going on, and we had no words to give him. He asked how we could do this to him and began to cry. I tried to console him, but he pushed me off of him. He said he had a hard day at work and decided to come home early and couldn't believe this was what he was greeted with. His sister wraps a sheet around herself and tries to go talk to him. They go into the guest bedroom, and I hear a lot of yelling about how she could betray him like that, how he wished she never moved in, and how she should have just stayed in the past where she belonged. I decided to walk in and told him not to speak to Jill like that. His sadness turned to rage quickly, as the anger was directed towards me now. He said that I was an ungrateful wife, and that I was wrong in having an affair, and the affair partner was his sister made him sick to his stomach. He told me that I knew how important we were in his life, and I chose to throw it all away, but I was in love. The following day, he served me divorce papers, and I showed them to Jill. I laughed and said that she was finally getting what she wanted. She laughed and agreed. When I saw my husband during the divorce hearing, he looked like a mess. His hair was greasy and unkempt. He had dark circles around his eyes from what I assumed was a lack of sleep. The glow and cheerful my husband I once knew was dead. I felt bad for a while, but Jill kept me together. A few months after the divorce, Jill and I lived together. We got her a great nursing job and enjoyed our relationship just as we did before, without the need to sneak around.